Yo,
What's up?
how's that?
We figured it out.
We figured it out over the first hurdle.
Wait, but how did it happen? Do we understand it, or was it magic?
It was just magic,
Interesting.
but it'll work from now on. Yeah, man. So what? Do you have like some kind of catchy opening for us?
I've been thinking more about why I hesitate to like want to hunt bear or like pull a bear tag. And I was just reflecting on that today. And one of the reasons I came up with is that for me to step into the wilderness or into the forest or into the mountains is to feel a little bit at risk. It's to feel that like I'm just one part in this larger ecology where everything eats and is eaten, And to me, to hunt a bear in a sense is to like assume this almost like God level of mastery over the environment. Like to kill an apex predator is to kind of like take that spot, even though like apex predators die all the time from environmental causes or, all sorts of reasons. It's not like that act explicitly makes it so you can't be hurt. But I do think that entering the wilderness should be a matter of like doing away with this notion that like nothing can happen to me. Like I have to be responsible out here.
You're accepting a level of risk for sure. Yeah, and I agree. I think that the risk and the acknowledgement of that risk, the management of that risk, is one of the most valuable parts about having these public lands that we're able to recreate on and use. So
totally.
I totally agree with you there. As far as your black bear comment, I mean, I think that what you're failing to acknowledge with that comment is that we are the apex predator. We are the most effective apex predator of all that's ever existed on Earth. Maybe if there's other planets, there's a better apex predator that's existed, but not here on planet Earth, right? We are the top dog. And so I don't think it's honest or useful to like reject that.
Yeah, but emotionally, that's like really hard for me to handle. That's too much responsibility.
But I mean, just like look at what we've done. Like there is not a single landscape in the world that isn't like the way it is because of our actions currently.
Don't remind me. It's making me anxious. No, I'm kidding.
But I don't think it's like even like something to be anxious over. It's just like a very like sober acknowledgement of like the way that things are. I don't think it's productive to like reject an easily verifiable objective truth like that.
I agree. But do you feel me though, that like there's something like either emotionally or ecologically different about like experiencing the wilderness as the top apex predator versus, let's say, like entering the wilderness in grizzly bear territory with nothing but bear spray, where like you just, even though like obviously if we think in the grand scheme of things, humans are the masterful apex predator. They have so much control, although that's also could be questioned, right? The amount of control we actually think we have. But you're right, we're the ultimate apex predators. But do you think that there's something important about entering an ecology where you're not? Or at least where you're temporarily relaxing that feeling of mastery? Like stepping into nature and feeling like you're hunted. Am I like romanticizing that too much?
I know what you mean. A little bit. Like I know, for example, when I was just scouting this last weekend, the risk of getting attacked and killed by a mountain lion is just vanishingly small. Like the risk that's posed to me by me breaking my leg and dying of exposure is 1,000-fold higher than me getting killed by a mountain lion, right? But I tell you, like when I go off trail and when I get up into that scraggly kind of broken rock sort of terrain, I'm looking out for mountain lions, and like it definitely adds an element to the experience that yes, I do think can be valuable. I'll be honest, I don't really like it. I don't really like it that much. But like I could never live with myself if I became the type of person who like would decide not to do something because of that fear. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's like in order for me to like live with myself, I need to like embrace that and not change my behavior in the face.
Why? What does it do for you? I'm curious.
What do you mean? What do you mean?
Like what does like handling that fear of being in a place where you're potentially vulnerable to a mountain lion attack? Like why is that? Is it just like that you're able to surmount that fear and accomplish your goal? Or is it something about that fear in itself that is like interesting?
No, it's just like, okay, if someone told me that they were going to go do something and they didn't because they're afraid of mountain lions, I'd be like, you are a bitch, you know? And I would just say that to myself if I ever changed my behavior because of a mountain lion. You know what I mean?
Okay.
I would just direct that right at myself, and that's like the worst feeling in the world.
As you know, like I've never gone hunting, and I wouldn't say I was like opposed to it, but I really never thought, like when I was younger, I maybe thought I would be into it, or I kind of romanticized it, like reading Where the Red Fern Grows or something like that, and being an outdoorsman and an avid fly fisherman. I was like into hunting. But then I think I kind of like, for whatever reason, which maybe we can get into, kind of decided that it was not something I wanted to do, or just could never really see myself getting into it. But hearing from you getting into it over the years, and hearing how much research you've done and how it's been such a catalyst for you to better understand the ecology around where you live, I started to just like reflect more on the potential for hunting to connect people with what's actually going on in their forests or in their surrounding landscapes in such a way that would make them more aware of something like the fact that fires are actually great for the environment.
Yeah.
Right? Like I think that the American public that you sort of like mentioned might not always be so informed. I think is informed in a certain sense, but also does not have a lot of on the ground practical knowledge of what's going on.
Yeah, no, it's so brilliantly said, Chase. You're a really smart guy, and that's a really smart comment. I mean, I would say that like most people's reason for getting into hunting and like my reasons for getting into hunting are like the three like easy ones, like the obvious ones, right? It's fun.
Yeah.
Just a fun thing to do. Like I've taught it's your evolutionary hardware kicking in. Like it's just a fun thing to do.
And not everyone has to agree with that.
No, it is in your evolutionary hardware. Like if you didn't like to hunt,
no, I know
you didn't get as much food and your kid didn't live, and there goes that genetic line, right? Like the knife of evolution was honing instinct to hunt for us, right?
Yeah, I'm saying it's in everyone a little bit, but to like different degrees. I'm saying like I would totally understand it if someone was like, I don't think it's fun to like stalk a deer and like shoot it with a gun like that. You know what I mean? But I also
haven't done it
yet. You can't possibly assume that everyone who goes hunting is gonna like it.
Okay, whatever. A lot of people think it's fun, and that's why a lot of people hunt. And it is fun. I love it. It's what I live for.
Totally. I agree with you. I'm into it. I support.
2, the food is amazing. It is amazing. It like blew my mind the first time I killed a white-tailed deer in Texas and had the first back straps off of that. I mean, it is awesome. I've eaten well over 10 different animals. I don't think that the word gamey, I don't think it exists. It's not a real thing. It's delicious meat. It's organic. It's sustainably harvested under the North American wildlife model of conservation. It's free range, ethically sourced. It's everything that you could possibly say good about a piece of food, and it tastes amazing. So that's reason 2. The meat is awesome. The reason 3 is that it's good for wildlife, right? It's how we have managed wildlife in this country, and we have one of, if not the most intact suite of megafauna among any developed country in the world, right? Wildlife in the United States is kicking ass, and the reason is hunting. And we can talk about that in future episodes because there's a lot that goes into that, but just that's true.
Yeah. I mean, that's a big question. It's a big question.
It's not a question. It's just something that, there's a lot of elements to that and why, understanding why that's the case.
For sure. I wasn't doubting it. I mean, like that, the question of the future of that dynamic, I think is an open question. Like, what will the future of the relationship between hunting and wildlife management look like?
Sure. Yeah. So those are the three primary reasons. That most people get into hunting, and the three reasons that I got into hunting. But you automatically jumped to like a PhD level answer, which I think was a beautiful answer. And it's an answer that I have come to discover as I progress through my hunting journey. It's a very important answer to me today, but it's not an entry level point that people often bring up.
So how do you see what I kind of described there?
It's beautiful, and it's the reason that I hunt. Yeah, it's like a major reason that I hunt is like learning about these landscapes. And one thing that you'll get into more that's equally awesome and rewarding and interesting is like learning about the quarry itself. Like, how can I understand the biology and the behaviors of this animal as a function of the landscape that you're in, the time of year, etc., to my advantage as a hunter, and try and exploit its weaknesses and etc. to be a more effective hunter. And like I think that sort of ties into that as well. But it just is under this larger umbrella of understanding wild things and wild places better.
For sure. And so I think that's what's cool and what's brought us together is that that's sort of both been our agenda for a very long time, is to learn about wild places and understand ecology better. Right now, I'm taking a more kind of scientific approach to that, as well as an anthropological approach in my research. And you've gotten really into hunting in the last few years. And
wait, Chase, can I stop you? I want to ask one more question. Okay, because this isn't something that we've discussed directly.
Okay.
I kind of thought there were two other possible explanations for why you were hunting because I don't know the answer. We haven't talked about it in depth. I thought one of the reasons might be, and this is like the skeptical Steven talking right now. I was like, one of the reasons Chase might be expressing the interest in going hunting with me is like some kind of just like cultural exploration. Like you don't like maybe he doesn't even want to be a hunter, but he just like didn't you like embed yourself in like a family of Amish people who like played violin or some shit in Massachusetts? Like, like you like to like
Are you clocking me as like a lifelong anthropologist?
I don't know. I don't know if that's even what you call that, but like maybe you're doing this just because like you like, oh, I wonder what that world's like. Like I'll dip my toes in and then jump back out, or like.
I love that you're saying that.
I thought maybe I could see that being a reason of yours.
If that's the case, would you feel betrayed if I was like, okay, I went hunting with you one time, we like recorded this podcast, I like wrote an article and was like, hunting, not for me. How would you feel?
Yeah, these guys are all douchebags.
No, I mean, but I think you're right that in a certain sense, this is something different that I've never experienced. And I'm always down with like experiencing something new and something complex and something that interests me. But also like we have this really long-standing relationship too, where we've grown up doing things in the outdoors, and your family in a really major way taught me how to fly fish and taught me how to spend time in the wilderness. And so to me, to see you get really into hunting and knowing kind of like the background that we share and the sensibilities that like I think we refine together, I'm just like, whoa, cool. You're so passionate about this. There must be something more to this that I'm not realizing. Some kind of deeper connection that you're forming, or something new with the natural world. So that's a main reason. But of course, I'm interested in experiencing new things that are really different, or even things that make me uncomfortable. Like I shot a gun for the first time in I don't know how long this summer, and I was nervous as hell and I was shook for a while, and I was really uncomfortable doing it. And afterwards it was kind of a rush, and I like came to kind of appreciate the power that the power and the responsibility that it took to wield it. Although I'm sure I need to go a long ways towards being more responsible with firearms, or there's more to learn there for me, but that's a different issue.
Yeah.
But I was like, whoa, this makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I'm not necessarily going to not want to learn about it just because it makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah. No, it's cool. And I think, I'll admit, I'm trying to like think of the best way to say this. One of the reasons why maybe I felt that way is because I know that you're interested in different like subcultures in the United States, like as an anthropologist. Another reason is that you are not the typical hunter demographic, right? Like in popular culture, how are hunters portrayed, like in Hollywood, for example?
Yeah, rural.
Right? Like beer drinking rednecks, just shooting anything that moves and laughing about it. And and generally, right, this stuff breaks down along like, if you were to look at like just as a proxy, hunter participation rates in blue states versus red states, right? Like it's going to be a lot higher in red states, and your values don't necessarily match that as much. Right. And so I think that this leads into like a much larger discussion. But one of the reasons that I wanted to bring you into hunting, because I thought it would be really, because I really value you as a friend, and I think you're a super cool guy, but also it'd be cool to like bring the like this like from like someone's perspective might be considered like an academic, like highbrow Hollywood liberal, like,
okay, let me ask you this.
Hippie.
Am I just a trophy conversion? Am I just a trophy conversion for you? Are you going to convert me to hunting and then hang me on your wall?
Like, that's what I didn't want to happen. But you know what I mean? I think
look at this Hollywood liberal cool. I converted to.
No. And part of this though is I do really feel as though it's important that hunting be depoliticized in order for it to have a healthy and sustainable future going forward. And so I do think it's very important for us to bring people who are not traditionally like politically aligned with hunters into the hunting world, right? Like I think that that's like a very important thing.
I would say depolarized instead of depoliticized, because I feel like hunting is always somewhat political, but it's polarized right now in a way that's really unfortunate, or it has been historically.
Yeah.
Right. Like, do you think you could really take the politics out of hunting? I mean, that's one of my favorite things about it.
Well, hunting did not used to be a political thing. I mean, this is like a recent development.
I think it always was a political thing.
No. Well, maybe like if you wanted to go back to like Indian treaties, like, yeah, I guess you're right. Like there have been lots and lots and lots. Probably like the number one cause of war in human history has been like, I want to hunt here. And they're like, no, I want to hunt here.
Yeah, literally. Like even upwards into colonial regimes and stuff, like between the French and Americans, the French and Indian War, like a lot of these things were about trade routes and beaver pelts and the commodity of wildlife and the fetishism of wildlife pelts and other sort of products that one can make and sell from these trades. I mean, that's always been a thing. But what's exciting to me, and a political thing, and what's exciting to me about the current moment is the more I think about hunting, the more I feel like it's almost like anti-capitalist. And though it's like the state of the United States who's implementing wildlife management like policy, I also think it could be like anti-colonial, and like be something that's about capturing a way of exchanging things with the natural world and with each other that predates a lot of these kind of like nasty systems that we find ourselves in.
For sure. I mean, and you and me would disagree on this. I am a capitalist, but I do recognize that wildlife is managed as a collective good in the United States, and is utilized as such. And I think that that's a very good thing for wildlife. I think that that's the proper management decision for wildlife. And that has been like demonstrated through like empirical results, comparing like places where wildlife is considered property that's privately held versus places where it's been considered publicly held in trust. Wildlife has done much better in places that it's held in public trust, and in places where it's not held in public trust, it's prohibitively expensive, right? Unless you are aristocracy or whatever.
So just real quick to ask you some things about that, because I do think this is maybe off topic, but super interesting to me. Like, you clearly see the benefits of holding wildlife in something like a public trust or to a collective ownership. Is that do all hunters see that, or are there hunters who would like to commodify hunting, be able to sell the things they shoot, be able to have private game reserves and whatnot? Like, is there a battle within the hunting community between the more pure capitalistic forces and maybe the more...
No, there's a very widely held consensus that we have the best system in the United States. Now, you might have fringe elements, international hunters, right, that just represent a vanishingly small population of hunters, but there's a widely held consensus that wildlife is best held in public trust, and the rights to hunt those animals are allocated democratically.
Yeah. And then there might be this whole other economy of people like guiding and that kind of thing, but that still doesn't necessarily dismiss the fact that the animals themselves and the process by which we allocate tags is democratic and
correct,
and operated like a trust. Yeah.
Now, if you go to talk to people in Europe, you get a completely different answer, but I don't understand European hunting culture. I don't know anything. It's a completely different culture. It's not even recognizable compared to North American, I'll say, hunting culture.
Well, I love that about hunting, that like, and I feel like I've learned that recently, that it is such a collective enterprise. And I also am so into the fact that like you recognize that as being like such an important facet. Like, do you feel that? Like, do you feel like it is a space for you to engage with others that exists like outside of capitalism? Like, is that an important feeling to you, or do you not really notice that?
I understand it intellectually. It's not an important feeling to me though, because like, you know, you might try to like then say like, oh, well, if that is ideally held in a collective trust, then everything else should be. No. It works well in this particular circumstance. And I
mean, it does beg the question.
You know, I see the value in it. I appreciate it is the way that it is. But it is not like something that's like deeply important to me about the experience of being a hunter.
Okay, I'm flagging that for later. I'm flagging that for a future conversation.
So what's the larger conversation here? What's the context of this?
Okay, the larger conversation here is I've been trying to decide whether or not to, if we go hunting in Northern California, to pull a bear tag, because shooting a bear makes me really uncomfortable because I think they're charismatic. I think they're cool. I love them, and to shoot them, the idea of shooting them hurts me. But I looked more into, you know, the history of bear management in California and the current population numbers and whatnot. And another kind of maybe more fundamental question came up for me, and it's one that maybe is more existential for me as a conservation biologist. But I just started to wonder, like, what really is the difference between like doing conservation science and hunting? And I came to ask this question because I learned that the state of California gives out, let's say, something like 1,700 bear tags a year. And all it oftentimes isn't filled, not even close, especially since they've banned hunting with dogs and trapping and whatnot. Like in the last few years, I think it's hovered somewhere in the 900s of bears harvested off the land in California. But each person who kills a bear and who buys a bear tag has to then take this bear skull, it's a kind of gruesome act to imagine, but take this bear skull and literally bring it to a California Department of Fish and Game office.
Love where you're going with this, Chase.
So they can extricate a molar from the bear's mouth so that they can get the age, gender, sexuality, life history. No, I'm kidding. So that they can get data.
Sexuality.
Trust me, they're going to want to know.
If they did, California would be first. You can bet your ass on that.
Well, you know, scientists might want that data. I support that. Although I don't want to like pin it down. Who are we to say what's the bear sexuality is? But but whatever, this tooth is harvested so that they can understand all of these things about the population, and based on the different age distributions and the sex distributions, and they can just figure out like how the bear population is doing, if there's been any sort of like environmental calamities that have like wiped out a certain age group or whatnot. They can like kind of use this data to then like abstract models of the whole population. And I thought that was so cool because it seems actually like really important data. But on the other hand, I also recognize that like we could pay people to go out as scientists or whatnot and like be out in the wilderness just observing these bears and you know, and somehow getting data from that, we could, there's all these other ways scientists use to study bears that isn't necessarily killing them, although it might be causing a lot of distress. A lot of conservation biologists put on radio collars, or they put on critter cams, or they tranquilize and take all of these samples, and then release them or trap them. And these are traumatic experiences, right, for these animals. And it happens all the time. Sometimes they're even killed. There's depredation permits and whatnot. So there's a certain amount of science thinking it doesn't kill animals. And so therefore it's higher or holier than hunters who are also collecting data. But I just don't know if that distinction holds so well. And I'll also note that so many conservation biologists have photos of themselves posing with the animals that they hunt, as their profile pictures or whatnot. And these photos look exactly like hunters' photos holding up dead animals. It'll oftentimes be a photo of them crouched next to a mountain.
Well, I'm sure a lot of them are hunters too, right?
That's true.
They probably are hunters, and they're probably taking gripping grants just like the rest of us. And they also happen to be scientists.
Well, I don't know.
I mean, some of them, yes, some of them, no.
Yeah. But even the ones who don't hunt, all the scientists I know maybe one who hunts, of people I know well.
Yeah.
But even all these other scientists who don't hunt have these photos. And so it sort of is kind of about holding them and controlling them, or somehow mastering them in a way. And so I'm just trying to think more about this distinction between hunting and science as epistemological modalities, or how we come to learn about the world,
Wonderful point. So that gets into argument 3, right? Hunting is good for wildlife. And most of wildlife biology is done through that mechanism. Many states have the same requirement. Deer, I brought my whitetail from Wyoming last year to the biologist. I brought all my Nebraska deer to the biologist.
Cool.
I brought my Texas deer to the biologist. And they're pulling lymph nodes. CWD is something that, you may know about, chronic wasting disease. It's a prion disease in cervids. And most of what we know about the transmission of that disease, you cannot know. You need death. You need to run a lymph node in a lab, and you can't get a lymph node out of a live deer, right? So you need that data in order to understand how these things are moving. And
you can't take a lymph node out of a live deer. Love it.
No, you can't. And so they rely on this data to understand how this disease is moving across the landscape, and then implement policies to mitigate the spread of that disease. That's one example. You said that you can pay people to go and collect this data, and that's true, right? You could pay people to go do this and collect data that maybe is better, maybe worse, whatever, to go look at these things. Or you could get paid by hunters that you can then take that money and go invest in a habitat project.
Get paid to do science?
In one case, you're putting money out the door. You're getting paid by the licensed hunters to go do the science and manage the species. Totally. This is the beauty of the North American model of wildlife conservation. And so, and the other point about this, especially black bears in California, I mean, they're at carrying capacity, especially Northern California, right? They're loaded with black bears. And there is I was doing a little reading before we came on here about the black bear. I already knew all this, but if you look at the IUCN, their least concern, their populations are growing or stable, or growing in most places, stable in all the others. They're occupying almost 100% of their historical habitat. They're just there's bears everywhere. Bears are kicking ass. They're a great conservation success story. And so what's the harm in killing a bear and getting this data that you can use to better manage the species and understand the species? It's not as if you don't kill it, it's going to live forever and become a fairy that then cures cancer. You can, it's just going to die later.
Okay, so on the one hand, it seems like there's scientific data to be gained from hunting black bears, which may or may not be able to be gained other ways, but certainly a valuable source of data. It's also a valuable source of money for the Department of Fish and Game to do management. I wonder what that money is really used for, and whether it's
it's used to fund the department. All the biologists, all the department is funded with hunter and fisher dollars and Pittman Robertson funds.
But then the question I have for you is are there other reasons related to either the ecology as a whole or human bear relations that would make hunting black bears also like a management strategy in the sense that like hunting deer or something like reduces their numbers and reduces the spread of Lyme disease and reduces the amount of transmission of Lyme to humans or something. Is there something else to be gained from hunting black bears, you think, like about?
For sure. Like I can speak specifically to that in like my home state of Colorado, where Colorado, like almost every single other state in the West, with the exception of maybe the Dakotas, is on a long-term population decrease of mule deer. Mule deer are really in trouble long term. And the reason for that is human development on their critical winter range. They need those sage flats to survive the long, tough winters out here. And people keep building houses on them. And so they're losing that critical range, and specifically migration corridors, right? Fences. If they can't migrate to those sage flats, they can't use them and they'll die. And we're seeing long-term declines in mule deer. And one of the things that hurts mule deer pretty bad are black bears. Black bear, they absolutely hammer mule deer fawns in the spring. And mule deer are already struggling with all of these humans imposed stresses. And so you have a very healthy, thriving population of black bear. Is it intelligent management to maybe knock them down a little bit, restore a little bit of balance? The bears are not reliant on those sage flats the way that the deer are. They're not subject to nearly the same constraints that the deer are from a human perspective.
Interesting.
Black bears play very nicely with humans. Right? Like they have like some of the highest densities in New Jersey. Like bears and people, they get along just fine. Mule deer and people don't. And so maybe we can manage some of those those bears, knock their numbers down a little bit to try and help give the mule deer a little bit of a leg up, and wait for some of the other conservation initiatives to hopefully help them out access those winter ranges and improve those winter ranges.
Okay, is it fair to say that I think it's such a good point that it might make sense to shave down some of the bear population to help another species like the mule deer? Now, black bears are everywhere, and they're not really a species of special concern or everything. But do you think they really do, like, do they flourish in areas where there's lots of people, or do they need wilderness too, like the mule deer?
They love people.
They do, yeah.
They love dumpsters and garbage cans and dumps and they love that stuff. I mean, they're everywhere. They're probably
becoming increasingly urbanized. They're probably gentrifying cities.
I mean, like if you want to like really like get a black bear, like that's like your only objective, like sit right on city limits, like California, Colorado, Utah, you name it, like sit right on city limits and you're going to get a bear. They love cities. They're always mixing it up with people.
And so do you think hunting black bears like near dumps or in cities would have some kind of like selective pressure on them that would be good or something? Like, do you see hunting as being able to be so finely tuned that like we can like manage problem individuals, but also
for sure. And that gets done. And the way they do that is by giving out permits that are restricted in the area that you're able to hunt. Right. So they'll give out a lot of permits, like for like urban populations of deer, elk, bears, depredation permits.
Oh, they do give out urban permits.
Yeah. Yeah. Many times they're like bow only, but yeah, there's plenty of ways to do that kind of stuff. And again, you can get paid to do that you can then invest that money into a mule deer winter range project. Or you can take money away from that mule deer winter range project and go pay someone, a government sharpshooter, to go take out the bear. Either way, the bear's dying.
Yeah, I've been reading about these depredation permits and just imagining like what this like sharpshooter community is like.
You just go get a gun and you shoot the bear.
And they're usually just like, who are they? Like retired law enforcement or hunters or hunting guides? Like how do you become a sharpshooter for like the state?
No, I bet in a lot of cases it's just the warden, the local warden.
Oh, true.
Yeah. You ride around with the 30-30 in the back seat and go get the bear.
Okay, so just another day taking out problem individuals. Oh, I just hate to think that there's such a thing as a problem individual. Like, so here's another question I was having reading about black bears. Is there a difference between hunting something for sport versus hunting something as a punishment? And in order to punish the thing you're hunting, right? Like, is that a crazy question?
I don't know if I've ever thought about that.
I know, I'm sorry.
I've done a lot of thinking about hunting and I've never thought about hunting in those terms before.
Like, to me, that there's something there might be something different about like hiking through the woods and hunting a deer or a bear, in the sense that like, if you want to get like really kind of like spiritual about it, it's like almost like this bear or deer like gave themselves to you in this moment, and it was sort of like synchronicity, and you were there and the bear was there, and you were intentionally doing it to harvest meat or whatever you wanted to harvest from the bear. And you were aware of this as like an exchange. Then there's the sense of like, okay, we're going to shoot problem individuals because they're eating alpaca, like a lion is eating alpacas out of a ranch or something like that, or a private estate. And we're going to shoot this individual because it's bad.
I don't think you're saying you're going to shoot it because they're bad. It's just like you're shooting it because it's like, this can't
go on.
Do that anymore. Yeah.
Yeah. It's unsustainable. You're right. And I'm not necessarily against depredation for reasons of like, what conservation biologists call problem individuals. I guess I'm just trying to understand maybe what the difference is between that kind of killing and killing for sport or for sustenance or whatnot. Maybe there's not a difference.
I don't really understand your question. I don't, in a lot of cases, like I don't even really consider that hunting, like shooting a problem bear or like shooting an elk that's eating up your alfalfa field in Montana. Like it's not even really hunting. It's just like killing animals. And I don't like say that like in a bad way. Like it's like something to be reprimanded. They're just different things.
Totally. And I wonder, I think there's like intense limitations on what you can do with their bodies too. Like you kind of have to throw them away. I don't think you can even eat them, right?
No, you can eat them if you get a depredation permit.
Oh, really?
I've never had a depredation permit, but I mean, in some circumstances, you might forfeit the meat. And typically when meat is forfeited, it goes to local food shelters.
Oh, really? I remember I heard something about someone having to kill a problem bear in somewhere, and they had to like throw it in the dumpster or something like that, like in the dump.
Perhaps a grizzly, right? With ESA protections, you would not be able to retain any of those bear parts.
Interesting.
Perhaps in a situation where a hunter or somebody killed a bear that they did not have a permit for, in most cases, you're going to have to forfeit that meat and that carcass. But yeah, as far as bears, my understand, like you said that you wanted to talk about bears, and this is something that you're obviously like really wrestling with, right? And like I really don't like it when someone would say something like this, but like it's the only thing I can really come up with is like why not hunt bears? Like if you're okay with hunting deer, like it's the exact same reasons. I don't understand like why it would be different. Like the only reasons that I can come up with, and I don't mean to be disparaging to the inner struggle that you're going on right now.
I'm not disparaging.
But like the only reasons that I can think of why like people have a hard time hunting bears is like that they like think they're endangered, which is like almost like saying that wildfire is like an ecological catastrophe. It's so stupid or misinformed. B, and then B, it's like, okay, once you understand that they're not endangered, they're perfectly sustainable. Their population is doing great. Then it's like the only reasons why are like they're like cuddly looking, which like granted they are pretty cuddly looking sometimes. They have eyes in the fronts of their heads, which are like kind of how we have our eyes. So we might be able to relate to them or feel like we relate to them because they also have the eyes in the front of their heads. Your mother might have given you a stuffed representation of one of them when you were a child in your bedroom.
We watched
what reasons? Like, I just don't like, those are all like, I just don't understand. I don't think that those are very good reasons, and you might feel differently, but I can't like formulate a good argument why like the calculus would be different for hunting a bear than it would be for hunting a deer.
Okay. Few reasons. One, I did watch Winnie the Pooh, and I do think they're cuddly. And when I see one, it gives me great pleasure to see it living and like to see it.
But do you not feel that way about a deer? Like I love deer. I think that they are so beautiful.
Yeah, it's true.
Like you'd be hard pressed to find an animal rights guy who likes deer more than I do. I love deer.
No, it's true. And I'm also going to struggle with shooting a deer for similar reasons. But I'd say like that's a baseline thing that both the deer and the bear would share.
that you love them and you love looking at them.
Yeah, and I like looking at them living, and I like looking at them like in their givenness.
And I can understand that argument for not wanting to hunt in general. I can't understand that argument for not wanting to hunt bears specifically.
Okay, but now here's the next reason. We hunt deer. I kind of know what we're going to do with that deer, right? We're going to quarter it. We're going to maybe try to use the hide for something, maybe use the antlers for like a knife handle. Like I kind of have a sense that like the amount of energy that the deer spent in its life living is going to be translated in like a reasonably efficient way to my life, and that I'm going to appreciate it. Right? Okay. Like a deer also grazes on grass.
Good reason.
Deer grazes on grass. So it's kind of low on the food chain.
So is bear.
A bear, but yeah, sure. A bear is omnivorous, and that's something we should talk about. But like, I do wonder, you know how like as you go up the food chain, more energy is sort of needed to sustain each animal. Like, you know, in the protein industry, for instance, they're talking about like using cricket instead of like beef or whatever, because it like requires less energy for the same amount of protein.
Yeah. What's the 8th grade biology little term for that? You know, come on.
I don't even know.
The 8th grade you get it in like 6th grade. Like, you know, it's the
trophic cascade or something.
No, not but it's like it's trophic levels, I think is what you call it, right?
Trophic levels, yeah.
Where you got 10 times more plankton than you have tuna, and you got 10 times more tuna than you have sharks, and blah blah blah.
So I don't know if this exactly applies to bears, but it might be a general rule for apex predators that like more energy needs to go into producing the life of an apex predator than a mesocarnivore or an herbivore, right? So there's something about taking it which feels like a little more indulgent than taking a deer.
Okay, that's Chase, the argument you just made, like I'll say is like a good one, but that's like a deeply like academic answer. Like I don't think that's your real answer.
No, but you have to understand, I feel really guilty sometimes about like taking things that I want, or like taking too much of something, or like, you know, I feel like part of being an ethical person for me is like being moderate, right? And like not taking more than I need.
Shane's shoot all the bears in the woods or go shoot one without a permit.
I know, but you have to understand, this is where I'm coming from. Like I'm kind of like concerned, but less concerned that it's just like an energy differential, and more concerned that I'm actually just like not familiar enough with what to like use bear for. Like I remember I was like, well, why do you want to shoot a bear? And you're like, bear meat. And I was like, what's bear meat? You're like, bear meat. And like, it just dawned on me that, wow, there is meat on a bear even, and that it is delicious. And I read about it and I learned about it, but I didn't know that. But there's also so many other things on a bear. I'm like, what the hell? Like, how do you use that? Yeah. And also like, what's its like spiritual significance for certain people? Like, it just feels more complicated to go straight to bear. I feel like that's something you would want to hunt after like a long time hunting something else, if you ever did. Like it feels just kind of quick.
Yeah.
To go from nothing to bear.
Yeah. So just like to answer like one of the simplest questions to address, what do you do with it? Bear, one of the cool things about a bear is you're going to use more off a bear than you will almost any other game animal. Yeah. So 3 primary cool things, maybe 4. One is the meat. Meat's outstanding. Anybody who's ever eaten bear will tell you that the meat's outstanding. It's delicious meat. It's just good. It's not like you try to make it good and you nod along. Like it's just good meat. 2, the fat is enormously useful for a whole range of things. But you can render it. It's extremely shelf stable. You can use it as a cooking oil. You can use it as a lard. You can use it for baking.
I heard they even put it on like pies or something, or like some kind of like dessert,
for like pie crust. It's just like an enormously useful and versatile kitchen item to have. So that's one thing that you don't get from a deer.
My mouth is salivating imagining a pie made with bear oil. Like somehow the fragrance that I imagine that would be in bear oil, because it's eating fungi and roots and
berries. So the great thing about a fall bear is they're usually getting fattened up on berries, especially like in Colorado, like in the high mountains. Those bears are delicious, right? You almost have like a berry infusion to the cooking oil or the rendered fat. It's outstanding. Second is the hide. The hide is a really cool, whatever you'd want to do with the hide, you can do with the bear hide. So a lot of people like to make a bear rug. If that is too ostentatious for you, you could like make a hat, you could make gloves, you could make a jacket. You'd probably need more than one bear for this kind of that stuff, but like you could throw the hide away or you could do something with it.
Wait, but here's the thing. I feel like it means something entirely different to have like a bear rug if you like bought it versus having a bear rug that you like hunted. Like,
yeah,
if someone had a bear rug in their house and I was like, where'd you get that? They'd be like, I don't know. I like bought it online or something. I would be horrified. But if someone said that they went hunting with like their oldest friend and shot a bear, or something last year and gutted it themselves and that brought the tooth or whatever, the whole story of what it would be to shoot. If someone told me that, I feel like I would be like, okay, like it makes more sense for this person to have it. And it's not like a fetish.
That's the thing about like trophies. Like people will like say like, oh, you like trophy hunting. It's like, well, I hunt because I love the meat, among the other reasons we discussed earlier. And I keep the meat. I ate the meat. It's like what I eat. And as far as like the antlers or like the bear rug, like, would it make you feel better if I just let this rot in the woods? Instead, I'm taking it into my home. I'm looking at it every day. I'm respecting it. I'm remembering the animal. I'm remembering the experience with my friend. I could just leave it in the woods to rot. Do you think that would be somehow like a better use of the animal? I certainly don't.
Well, couldn't you use all of those things in its head? Like its antlers could be used for things, its teeth, its brain, or whatever. Like, I think it does.
Good. I use it for wall decorations. I don't buy art. I kill animals. I do use it. Like I deeply treasure those items.
But this is a job. Yeah, no, I guess it's if it's on your wall, it means something. For some reason, it feels less weird to me to wear it or to like use it in a medicine or something. But I guess those are pretty similar.
They're your antlers, man.
Putting it on a wall.
You can do whatever the hell you want with them. They're your antlers. I recommend putting them on your wall. I think that antlers are amazingly aesthetic, and I like them more. I like them better than anything anyone could ever pay me.
How many do you have now on your walls?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Whoa, that's a lot. That's cool.
Yeah.
The only thing I've ever had taxidermied was a giant barracuda.
And then you could keep the skull on a bear too, and I would display it. I would display my bear skull the same way I display my Euro-mounted deer and elk antlers. But I would just have the skull, right? And I would mount it right there. And I think skulls are beautiful too.
I was going to say, what if I wanted to use it for like some kind of like dark magic or ritual, which was a joke at first. But I also do think this is something.
Dude, I would say that it's your.
I know you would. I know you would. But I also do think that it's something, I sort of meant that as a joke, but I do feel like that there's probably a lot of First Nations peoples who have like really intimate relations with all the different parts of the bear, including its like mythos. And I know, at this point, like settler colonialism is so expansive and ongoing, and it seems like it's over, even though it never will be probably. But like, I do feel somehow like I want to understand more how First Nations people relate to bears and hunting and stuff before without any sort of like ancestry of people who I'm related to hunting this, or people who I've been in community with hunting this, aside from you. Like, it just feels kind of like extraction to me, as opposed to like a natural outgrowth of like a culture that I'm a part of.
And it feels that way with a bear that doesn't feel that way with a deer.
It feels less so that way because of a deer, but I think that you're right, that there isn't really a difference in terms of the culture. In terms of this point, this is more maybe why I hesitate to hunt in general, and especially in certain places like where we were hunting, which was like kind of like so close to like the Yurok and the Kurok, indigenous lands and the reservation there in Hoopa and whatnot. Like, I feel, I guess I just feel like I want to be sort of delicate when I tread on land that like ultimately was stolen, even though now it's being managed in a way that allows access for everyone. But
so I'll just push back against. I'm not going to cede the idea that land is stolen. But
okay,
that's a topic for another day. But you feel as though that land is stolen.
Yeah, a bit.
One of your
do.
friendly podcast hosts feels it's stolen. The other one doesn't.
No, I do, and it's not to say that I'm not like happy to use it or not. Like, obviously, I use these lands. I want to be aware of that history, and I want to feel like I am like not necessarily like recolonizing this place, even as I am sort of extracting value out of it, both literally and like, pleasure and joy and community.
It's a very well, like, beautifully worded and intelligent answer to that. It's not a factor in my decision making, though. I mean, this is just like a situation where you and I think differently about things.
No, I totally get that.
Like, for example, I'm not a spiritual person, right? I come from like a Roman Catholic upbringing and tradition. And I don't really believe the tenets of that. And I'm not really all that interested in what those dudes in Italy, I don't really care about their thoughts on bears. I treat all like creeds the same way. Like, it just isn't.
Imagine the Pope making a decree against hunting bears. I feel like that's possible.
I just like doesn't matter. It's not like a relevant factor in my decision making.
Totally.
And like I don't view like the Native American like spiritual beliefs like any like higher or lower. I view them as human spiritual beliefs.
But do you view them a little bit?
I don't pay a lot of like regard to those. Like, they just don't.
Do you view them a little bit differently, considering that they do have, and like we're being very general here, which is maybe a problem, but that they might have like a kind of longstanding relationship with the bear as like, or the deer or any other sort of like wildlife in North America as like
all religions are old enough to like, those people lived with the land.
True.
Like, who invented these religions, like all of them did. They were old.
Of course, yeah.
Didn't have iPhones back then. Like they're very intimately familiar with the land.
I feel like we'd both be surprised to find out how much of like current management strategy, like by the state or by Department of Fish and Games, would be inspired by like Christianity or like the Judeo-Hebrew tradition. Like I feel like a lot of these like foundational ideas we have of nature like do come from those places, even if we're not exactly like aware of it or thinking about it.
Yeah, perhaps. The reason I want to hunt bears is because there are a ton of bears in Northern California. And like in California, like if you're going to be like a California hunter, like bear is like the everyman's quarry. Like there's just like a lot of them. You can reliably bring home meat to your family. There are still a lot of people like that. And it is still a primary motivation for a lot of people. Don't make a ton of money, can't buy organic meat, but they can shoot a bear and feed their family with it the entire year.
Totally.
And that's like a very important like financial contribution and like a very important resource for people. And I'm sure there's a lot of people in California who have like turned to bear as the black-tailed populations have dropped in many places, as hunter numbers have increased and made black-tail hunting more and more difficult, as elk permits have become more and more difficult to draw. People are like, the bear is like the everyman's animal in California. Like any hard-in hunter worth their salt can kill a bear in California every year.
How come you think they're not reaching the limit each year? Like only half of what's even being allocated, I feel like, is being harvested.
I don't necessarily know exactly the numbers in California. It seems like you're more familiar with that. Bear are not generally considered. This is something that most people most people who aren't hunters wouldn't. People think like, oh, if you ever shot a bear, that would be like the sickest animal. Like that's like the trophy animal, but like they're just like not that desired among hunters. Like, because like the biggest reason because they don't have antlers.
Really? So you think the trophy of the antler is driving a lot of people's decision?
Yeah, big bucks sell. Like Big bucks are sweet. And I don't say that as a criticism. Like, I love big bucks.
I love big bucks.
And I'm not going to say what everyone else says. But like, no,
I resisted.
I love big bucks. I resisted. And bear don't have that. They're just like not that, like, they're not like an aspirational species. Like, you don't like brag to your buddies on the internet that you killed a bear, like among hunting circles. Like, some people do. Like, bears are cool and a lot of people appreciate bears, but like they don't really have like much like trophy appeal among hunting circles. And like if you were like a meat hunter, then like bear would be what you target. Like, and I say a meat hunter, like literally the only consideration is bringing home meat. Bear would be a great animal to target, but a lot of people hunt for more reasons. They value the meat, but they also value other aspects of the hunt.
Yeah.
And for those reasons, they might prefer to chase deer, which would be why they don't fill their quotas.
That all makes a ton of sense to me, and you're like making a convincing case for sure. And the only other thing that I have really to say,
also, Chase, I should say that a lot of black bear hunters, I actually have a much better answer. A lot of black bear hunters, you need to understand like the history of how black bear hunting has evolved. And it was like a very much like a hound sport.
Yeah.
Like there are like lots and lots and lots of houndsmen. There's a huge, rich cultural history between hound hunting for bears. It's just like the way that the pursuit evolved. And so like when it was banned, like there were probably like a lot of people who were like completely dejected, gave it up, quit. Like you're almost having to like build like a new spot and stock culture for black bear hunting out of scratch, which I'm sure like will happen, but it's going to take time, right? Because those people are feeling pretty burned. They're probably going to Nevada. They're probably going to Idaho. They're probably going to Oregon. They're probably going to Utah.
So most of black bear hunters in the past were hound hunters. It was not a lot of stock.
It's the primary way that bears are killed in the United States.
Oh, I think that's actually what the California Department of Fish and Game Wildlife website said was a reason why they don't fill the quota anymore. They explicitly said that because they're no longer using hounds. Well, that's interesting. I mean, that's another conversation, whether or not that is like sport or cruel or not cruel or whatnot. But it's another sort of fine distinction that I think it would make sense for us to get into. But the other sort of final thing I'll say is it just does feel somehow different to hunt an apex predator versus something that has evolved to be hunted. Like, I know historically black bears.
Is a black bear an apex predator?
I mean, now it is in most of its range, except for where there's grizzlies, but not a lot of things other than humans kill black bears, I think, you know?
Yeah.
And I think this maybe has something to do with my...
What about for the most of its evolutionary history? Has it been an apex predator or has it had been more of a meso predator?
I mean, there was probably thick with grizzly bears.
I think the answer is B.
Yeah. And that they overlapped some, but not entirely. Yeah.
Well, I mean, just think what 14,000 years ago, the Pleistocene, when humans first came over, right? You had American lions, you had American cheetahs, you had different kinds of bears, short-faced bears. It was a very different landscape just 10,000 years ago, 20,000 years ago.
Totally.
And how much longer is the evolutionary history of the black bear than 10,000 years? Like, I don't think that a black bear is an apex predator.
And even if it was, why would I want to stabilize that?
But that's irrelevant. You don't like the idea of hunting a predator.
Yeah, I do. I do find it somehow unseemly or like makes me uncomfortable to hunt a predator, whereas hunting a deer somehow makes me feel like more part of the ecosystem, as opposed to like this thing coming down upon it from like my pillar of humanity to be like, I'm gonna turn this all around and hunt predators. You know, I don't know. Somehow it feels like it situates me differently as a person in the ecology, and I'm not quite sure how to articulate that, but I definitely feel different.
So do you feel that way? Let me draw an analogy to fishing.
Yeah, fishing for shark would be weird for me, I feel like. I know.
But just like a tuna.
Yeah,
like tuna. Going and chase false albacore or something.
Yeah.
Or a largemouth bass or whatever.
Okay. I think the overall point is that none of these arguments individually hold water. They're not airtight, but somehow when I tie them all together into a knot and like make this larger argument, like their collective incapacity to hold the reason entirely within themselves somehow like like contributes to a sense that I'm uncomfortable with hunting black bears. But you're right. Like I do sense a sort of internal paradox to what I'm describing as my reasons. And I think that's something that I want to work through.
Yeah. I would say to you in the least disparaging way possible that if you put together a bunch of arguments that don't hold water, all you have are a bunch of arguments that don't hold water. You don't have one good argument. Like, you could have like the million bad arguments, and I still don't acknowledge that as like being one good argument. I would rather have one good argument.
If I pull a bear tag, maybe I'll come up with the one good argument in the forest, like while we're walking around, which is say that I'm thinking
Like when it's in your scope.
But I'm going to dwell on the uncertainty and also probably pull a tag if we do end up going to Northern California, just to have it.
All right, man. I think we got to wrap it.
I agree. This was so fun. And I can't wait for the next one. And this was the first of many.
Yep.
And hopefully we'll even get to get out there.
Agreed.
All right, have a good night.